The air in the house was thick with tension, though no words had been exchanged. Nathan Carter stood at the doorway of his study, the glow of Samantha's phone illuminating her face as she sat on the couch. She didn't notice him. Her fingers danced on the screen with a kind of energy he hadn't seen in years. "Miss you already," she whispered with a soft smile that stabbed Nathan in the gut. Her voice, once his sanctuary, now sounded foreign. He stepped back silently, his heart pounding in his chest, and made a decision that would alter the course of their lives. If she wanted to see, he would show her what it felt like to be outplayed. Nathan adjusted his tie in the mirror, a calculated calmness masking the storm inside. Tonight, Samantha would understand that actions have consequences. As the garage door rumbled open, he descended the stairs, each step with purpose. Samantha stood at the bottom of the stairs, her brow furrowed in confusion. "Why are you dressed up?" she asked. "I have a date," Nathan said coolly. Her face turned ashen. "With who?" "I'd love to chat, but I'm running late," he replied, brushing past her. She followed him to the door, panic rising in her voice. "Wait a minute, Nathan. We need to talk?" The door closed behind him, cutting off her protests. Nathan smirked as he started his car. Tonight wasn't about cheating. It was about sending a message. His so-called date was staged, but the impact would be real. Samantha sat in stunned silence after Nathan left, 1,000 thoughts racing through her mind. He had to be bluffing. Nathan, her devoted husband of 7 years, couldn't possibly be stepping out on her, could he? She glanced at her phone. A new message from Eric Goodman lighting up the screen. "Eric still on for tonight? Can't wait to see you." A pang of guilt shot through her, but she pushed it aside. Eric was her escape. The thrill she had craved in her monotonous marriage with Nathan was gone for the night. She decided to follow through with her plans. Nathan wasn't driving to a date. Instead, he met his old friend, Derek Hayes, at a dimly lit diner. Derica, a private investigator with a knack for digging up the truth, handed Nathan a folder brimming with evidence of Samantha's affair. "She's been careful," Derek said, "but not careful enough. This guy, Eric Goodman, he's trouble, not just for your marriage, but for himself. He's engaged." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Engaged to who?" "Her name's Lauren," Derica replied, "an attorney. She's already suspicious, but doesn't have proof yet." Nathan leaned back in his chair, a plan forming in his mind. If Samantha thought she could play him, she was about to find out how wrong she was. The next day, Samantha sat at her desk, her thoughts oscillating between Nathan and Eric. She told herself she deserved this, deserved to feel alive again, but deep down, a voice whispered that she was playing a dangerous game. Meanwhile, Nathan connected with Lauren. Their initial meeting was tense, but as they shared their stories, a bond began to form. Both had been betrayed by the same man, and both were determined to reclaim their dignity. Nathan and Lauren devised a plan to expose Samantha and Eric at the company gala, a grand event Samantha was co-hosting. With Derek's help, they uncovered incriminating evidence, including text messages, emails, and even photos. The night of the gala arrived, and Samantha was radiant in her sequin gown, oblivious to the storm brewing around her. Nathan arrived arm in arm with Amelia, whose presence was meant to stoke Samantha's jealousy. As the evening unfolded, Nathan took the stage under the guise of giving a speech about corporate success. Instead, he clicked through a presentation that revealed Samantha and Eric's affair in explicit detail. Gasps filled the room as Samantha's world crumbled before her eyes. The fallout was swift and brutal. Samantha tried to apologize, but Nathan was resolute. "You didn't just betray me," he said, "you betrayed us." Eric faced his own reckoning when Lauren served him with legal papers the next morning. His career and personal life were in shambles. For Nathan, the path forward wasn't easy. He spent months rebuilding his life, leaning on Amelia for support. Slowly, their friendship blossomed into something more, proving that love can emerge even from the ashes of betrayal. Samantha sat alone in the guest room of the home she and Nathan once shared. Her phone buzzed relentlessly with calls from colleagues, friends, and even her family, all asking for an explanation she couldn't give. She opened her messages, scrolling through the text she had exchanged with Eric over the past months. They had once felt intoxicating, thrilling. Even now they were nothing but evidence of her worst mistake. Across town, Eric wasn't faring any better. His fiancée, Lauren, had left their shared apartment that morning with a packed suitcase and a promise to see him in court. His position at the company was under review, and the respect he once commanded had turned into whispers behind his back. Nathan's decision to stay in the house while Samantha moved into a hotel wasn't just practical. It was symbolic. He was reclaiming the space that had been tainted by her betrayal. Amelia, the friend who had been his anchor during the turmoil, visited often, helping him redecorate and breathe new life into the home. Over coffee one evening, she hesitated before saying, "You know, rebuilding after something like this, it's not just about the space. It's about you." Nathan looked at her, his gratitude clear. "I'm working on that," he said softly. Samantha, meanwhile, wasn't ready to give up. She wrote Nathan a heartfelt letter, pouring out her regrets and promising to do whatever it took to earn back his trust. But Nathan, though he read the letter, wasn't moved. He needed more than words. He needed proof of her growth. Determined to show she could change, Samantha began seeing a therapist. In her sessions, she confronted uncomfortable truths about herself. The insecurities that had driven her to seek validation elsewhere, the selfishness that blinded her to Nathan's pain. She also volunteered at a local shelter, rediscovering a part of herself that cared about others beyond her own desires. Slowly, she started to feel like someone worth fighting for, not just for Nathan, but for herself. Eric, on the other hand, spiraled further. His attempts to contact Samantha were ignored, and his career prospects dwindled. The man who once seemed unstoppable was now a shadow of himself. Months later, Nathan found himself at a charity event with Amelia. As they laughed over an inside joke, he realized how much lighter he felt around her. She had been as constant through the storm, not by filling the void Samantha left, but by helping him rediscover the version of himself he thought he'd lost. Samantha, seeing their growing closeness from a distance, felt a pang of regret. But she didn't interfere. She had made her peace with the fact that she might never get Nathan back. Instead, she focused on herself, working tirelessly to rebuild her career and self-respect. In time, she started dating again, this time with a healthier understanding of love and boundaries. The day Nathan signed the divorce papers, he felt a sense of closure. It wasn't joy, but it wasn't sorrow either. It was simply the end of one chapter and the start of another. As he walked out of the courthouse with Amelia by his side, he realized life wasn't about holding on to the past but about embracing the possibilities ahead. Samantha, too, stood at her own crossroads. Though her marriage was over, her journey was far from it. She had learned the hard way that trust, once broken, could never be fully restored. But she had also discovered something more important: how to trust herself. Nathan and Amelia stood on the balcony of his newly remodeled home, watching the sunset. "Do you think we'll ever stop looking back?" he asked. Amelia smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "Not completely, but maybe that's a good thing. It reminds us how far we've come." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Nathan let out a deep breath. He wasn't looking back anymore. He was ready to move forward. Nathan, now fully immersed in his business ventures, had achieved a newfound balance in his personal and professional life. His relationship with Amelia blossomed naturally, built on mutual respect and trust. They took things slowly, valuing the connection they were forming rather than rushing into anything. One evening, as Nathan was sorting through some old paperwork, he came across a photograph of him and Samantha from their honeymoon. He stared at it for a long time, memories flooding back. He didn't feel anger or sadness, just a sense of gratitude for the lessons learned and the man he had become. Samantha, too, had grown. She attended a business seminar one evening where she bumped into Lauren. Both women hesitated, but Lauren, now exuding confidence from her thriving legal career, offered a handshake. "No hard feelings?" Samantha asked cautiously. Lauren smiled. "Life has a funny way of teaching us what we need to know." The two women shared a brief but meaningful conversation, each acknowledging their part in the chaos that had once intertwined their lives. Eric's story, however, took a darker turn. Stripped of his job, fiancé, and reputation, he sank into a life of excess, trying to numb the pain of his failures. One evening, as he sat alone at a bar, he saw an old college friend who barely recognized him. "You used to have it all, man," the friend said, shaking his head. Eric realized in that moment how much he had lost. Lost not just in terms of material possessions but his integrity, his sense of self. He decided to check himself into rehab, knowing it was the first step toward redemption. A year after the Gallo incident, Nathan was invited to a charity event hosted by a mutual business associate. Amelia accompanied him, their relationship now solid and full of promise. To his surprise, Samantha was there, mingling with the crowd. She looked radiant, a confident smile on her face as she talked with another guest. When their eyes met, she walked over. "Nathan," she said, her tone warm but reserved. "Samantha," he replied, nodding. For a moment, silence lingered between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. "I wanted to say thank you," she said, "for everything, for the wake-up call, for showing me what I needed to see." Nathan smiled faintly. "You're welcome, and thank you for the good times we had. They weren't all bad." She laughed softly. "No, they weren't." They parted ways that night, not as enemies or former lovers, but as two people who had shared a chapter of their lives and had moved on. As Nathan and Amelia drove home, he glanced at her and said, "You know, for the first time in a long time, I feel free, like everything happened exactly as it was supposed to." Amelia squeezed his hand. "Life is a way of working out, isn't it?" He nodded, looking out at the road ahead. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold, a perfect backdrop for the new journey awaiting them. Meanwhile, Samantha sat at her desk, finishing the outline of a book she had decided to write. Her story of love, loss, and personal growth, she titled it Lessons in Trust. For her, it was a way to close the chapter fully and embrace the next phase of her life. Eric, now sober and working at a smaller firm, focused on rebuilding himself from the ground up. He had started volunteering at a local community center, finding purpose and helping others avoid the mistakes he had made. Each of their lives, though deeply intertwined in the past, now moved forward on separate paths. And for the first time, all of them could look toward the future without regret. 2 years later, fate brought the group together once more, though not in the dramatic circumstances of their shared past. The town's annual charity gala had grown in prominence, and Nathan, now a major donor, was invited as a guest of honor. Amelia, by his side, had blossomed into a partner both personally and professionally, helping Nathan grow his business into new ventures. Samantha was also there, not as a guest but as an organizer. After rebuilding her career in real estate, she had taken on a side role in event planning, channeling her creativity into a new outlet. She felt a mix of nerves and pride seeing her name listed among the event's coordinators. Lauren, thriving in her legal career, arrived with a new partner, a fellow attorney she had met during a high-profile case. She carried herself with the same grace and confidence that had helped her weather the storms of her past. Even Eric made an appearance, though far removed from his previous persona. Sober and humbled, he attended as a guest speaker for a recovery program that the gala supported. His journey of redemption had brought him to a place of honesty and accountability, and while he still bore the scars of his mistakes, he wore them as badges of growth rather than shame. Nathan spotted Samantha first, talking animatedly with a group of guests. She looked genuinely happy. Her laughter reached him even across the bustling room. When she noticed him, her smile didn't falter. Instead, she approached with a lightness he hadn't seen in years. "Nathan," she greeted warmly. "Amelia, good to see you." "Both you too," Nathan said, his tone sincere. "How's the business?" Samantha asked, her eyes reflecting genuine curiosity. "Better than ever," Nathan replied. "And you? Event planning seems to suit you," she laughed softly. "It does," she said. "It's been grounding." The exchange was brief, but filled with mutual respect. They weren't friends, but they were no longer adversaries. Later in the evening, Eric took the stage. The room quieted as he began his speech, sharing his journey from success to downfall and ultimately redemption. "I lost everything," he said, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "Not just my career or relationships, but myself. It took hitting rock bottom to realize what mattered most. being honest, not just with others, but with myself. His eyes briefly met Nathan's, then Lauren's, and even Samantha's. He didn't dwell on their shared history, but acknowledged it silently as part of the journey that had brought him here. The room erupted in applause as Eric stepped down, a mixture of admiration and respect following him. As the evening wound down, Nathan and Amelia stood on the balcony, overlooking the city. The hum of the gala was behind them. "Did you ever think we'd all end up in the same room again?" Amelia asked, her voice soft. Nathan chuckled. "Not like this, but it feels right, doesn't it? Like everyone's found their own way forward." Amelia leaned into him, her warmth anchoring him in the moment. "Life's funny that way," she said. "It doesn't erase the past, but it gives us a chance to rewrite our futures." Inside, Samantha mingled with the guests, her heart lighter than it had been in years. Lauren laughed with her new partner, her confidence unshaken. Eric stood near the buffet, accepting a handshake from a guest who thanked him for his speech. And Nathan, gazing out at the city skyline with Amelia, smiled. The scars of the past had faded, leaving behind only the lessons and the hope for brighter days ahead.